Hi, my name is Dominic Rubino. Welcome to the Cabinet Maker Profit System podcast and YouTube channel. I'm glad you're here. Today, we're bringing you a guest from Australia. It's Phil McGilvray. And we're going to be talking about how to move money around within your company to make sure you're always profitable. Who's not interested in hearing that? Now, you might be thinking, hey, Rubino, why are you bringing me some guests from Australia? Because the world is bigger than your backyard, my friend. As a matter of fact, would you believe this? Another one of our listeners who's based in Australia, who runs a large cabinet shop there. Actually, I think he's the president of his chapter of the Australian Cabinet Makers Association. Anyways, he's currently sailing around the world and listening to this podcast while he's sailing around the world. Turns out he's going to be going through the Panama Canal any day now. Well, we have another listener who lives in Panama. And so after he goes through the locks of the Panama Canal with his sailboat, he's going to meet with that cabinet maker in Panama for a beer. How cool is that? My point is, the world is bigger than your backyard. It really is. And the wisdom that I try to bring you here from having great guests like Phil keeps you thinking about things in a bigger and bigger way. Remember, this whole show is for you to be a business person who just happens to run a cabinet shop, a business person who just happens to run a millwork shop. I want to take you off the tools. I want to get you working from the neck up. Listen, as you listen to this episode with Phil, which we've already recorded, it occurred to me that one of our professional development tools called the Go Back Report is going to be very valuable if you find any interest in what Phil's talking about here. So if you want the Go Back Report so that you understand exactly how much you need to be charging to make sure that you're profitable on every job, that's exactly what this tool does. You guys know my cell phone number, but text me there and just say Go Back. My cell phone, for those of you who don't have it written down yet, is 315-903-7853. Let's get to the episode with Phil. I know you're going to love it. Mr. Phil McGilvray, how are you?
I am fantastic. Thanks, Dom. I am really excited to be here. Really excited to be here, mate.
Yeah, it's you and I have had competing schedules, so getting you here has been a bit of a challenge, which is fine. I like talking to busy people because usually you have something to say.
Yes, that's exactly right, mate. They always say if you want something done, give it to a busy person. So yeah, so here we are. We've made a time.
You're the guy. Well, one of the questions that we have amongst our audience here is, financial controls and making sure that we are making enough money. Let me come back to the topic in a second. I just wanted to give everybody a teaser of that. But I'm going to start with the question I always ask people. Phil McGilvray, who the heck are you? And how is it that you come to be speaking to all these forward-facing woodworkers all over the world?
That's a great question, Dom. Who am I? Well, I am a finance professional. That makes it sound really, really boring. But I'm on a mission to make finances, especially for entrepreneurs and small business owners, practical, fun, and easy to understand. That's my mission in life. And just to give you a bit of background, I don't actually come from an accounting background. My grandma taught me how to budget when I was 18 years old using physical glass jars and physical money.
Oh, really?
And it was a lifesaver for me at the time because I was over in the UK doing my gap year, and I was, as an adventure training instructor, being paid the princely sum of £15 a week. And so it didn't stretch very far. So grandma helped me do that. I came back from the UK, passionate about actually managing money. And so I started talking to anyone that would listen how to manage money. And in the 35 years since then, you can see we're a little bit gray like yourself, mate.
Yeah.
35 years since, I've evolved the system that grandma taught me, obviously from glass jars to, we went to paper budgets, and then we went to Excel spreadsheets, and then we went to, now I've got my own line sort of budgeting software and those sorts of things for families and so on. But, so I've taught tens of thousands of families how to master their money and their cash flow and those sorts of things.
I think one of the most incredible parts of that, if I can interrupt you for a second.
Of course.
I want to come back to something that you blew past, but I think is important. Are you telling me that you had conversations about money when you were a kid from somebody in your family?
Yes.
And then let me ask you this. How often does that happen with the people that you work with?
Next to never.
I know, it's crazy, isn't it? And I think that's where these money problems start, is we don't talk about it with our kids. I always say at the kitchen table. I grew up with a great life. We ate dinners together, and
Yeah.
We didn't talk about money. I had to go learn it.
You do, and you learn through trial and error and the hard way, don't you? And
Yeah.
some people, some people get crippled by the mistakes, some people don't. And but so yeah, I did. I was fortunate enough, and I often say that, and that's why I like to start with this story, because that was the beginning for me. I was privileged. I had someone that took the time to teach me the basics. And the beautiful thing about finance is, we live in this very fast-paced, ever-changing world, but the principles of finance never change. But I've had 35 years of that financial coaching, but I also then because of that, I became a financial advisor, spent 20 years financial advising, and ultimately became a partner in Australia's leading stockbroker financial planning firm.
Wow.
Only to realize that that's not at all what I enjoy or what at all I want to be doing, and that it doesn't really teach the basics. So about 18 years ago, I really felt a calling from God to sort of leave my 7-figure income there and to focus on helping entrepreneurs with their finances. And I'd spent years and years and years analyzing balance sheets and financial reports and those sorts of things. So I knew what it took to teach. I knew what it took to build a successful business. So stepped into the entrepreneurial world, started sort of building systems and processes, and here we are today. So sorry, long answer to a short question, but
no, I think it gives us that context. Well, it's better than you saying, I don't know, I read a book and I thought I'd start telling people about it. Right?
That's right. Yeah, that's right. I've also, like, just from the financial education, what you were saying before about people not learning, I had the privilege a few years ago. I was awarded a Winston Churchill Fellowship, which is a trust fund that was set up on the death of Winston Churchill back in 1960 something. And it's awarded by the Queen's representative here in Australia. And it allowed me to study financial literacy all over the world. And it was interesting. The big finding from that was that financial literacy in schools doesn't work, because it's a life skill, not an academic subject. And
oh
that
my gosh,
really,
what a great takeaway. Say that again.
Sorry?
Sorry, say that again so everybody hears it.
It's a life skill, not an academic subject.
Gosh, that's so
and so what that meant then is that model that they assume in school, that if we give the kids the knowledge, that knowledge will somehow translate into capability, simply doesn't work. So a lot of people say, well, why didn't they teach this to me in school? And a lot of schools do have some kind of basic financial literacy program, but we sort of blow through it because it's just an add-on to some topic at a very inappropriate age, where it's completely not relevant to us. And so we learn it to pass a test, and then we forget about it. And so the key place that money skills need to be taught is actually at home by mum and dad,
at the kitchen. Well, at
the kitchen table, at the supermarket, at wherever, and in age appropriate, relevant, real life situations.
I wonder if anybody remembers the first time they explained taxes to their kid when they went to buy like a chocolate bar or something. They're like, I have enough money. You're on that summer vacation, it's somewhere on a lake or on a beach. You're walking along and your kid wants to buy their first chocolate bar or Slurpee, and they have money.
Yeah.
Grandma gave them money, right? They got $2 from grandma.
Yeah.
And oh my God, these analogies are going to go away when we stop using cash.
Yeah.
But then I'm gonna have to explain to my child, because it says $2 for the product. You don't have enough money.
Yeah.
Grandma gave you $2. The Slurpee costs or the chocolate bar costs $2, but you actually need, I'll just say $2.35 and be wrong in most of the world. But you need more. And explaining taxes to a kid, they're like, what? That doesn't make sense. Dad, you're always joking. I'm like, nope. Not joking.
No, that's right. But it's so important. Those are the life lessons that we need to be. And so often parents will sort of stand back from the idea of, oh my gosh, how on earth am I going to teach my kids about finances? I haven't even got it all together myself. But that's exactly right. You've learnt the hard way. You've made the mistakes. That's what we teach the kids. And then in just relevant, real, like you said, an ice cream, it's $2 isn't enough. You've got to add tax onto that. In the actual situation, that is where we want to teach these things.
Yeah. Can I share something that I tried with my kids?
Yeah, of
And we're
course.
not going to know if this works because my kids are still young, they're in their teens, late teens.
Yep.
So we don't know if I've ruined them yet. We'll find out.
Yeah,
We'll find out when the therapist calls me into the meeting.
that's right.
But when they were really little, I remember I didn't get trained on money as a kid. We didn't talk about money at all
No,
at my kitchen table.
no.
And at some point, I started to study the same as you did, Kiyosaki and just all of those, great writers about personal financial management, Dave Ramsey,
Yep.
all that stuff. But I was
Yep.
much younger at the time. We would just play money with my kids. I would go upstairs. We would lay down in my bedroom, and the I don't know if you have it, but you put all your change at the end of the day into a jar or a bucket
Yes.
in the
Yep.
bedroom. So we would just play money, and I would pull out the money and throw it on the floor, and I'd say to the kids something simple like divide that into equal piles. Like everybody gets you know 11 coins. It doesn't matter, right? And then you realize,
Yeah.
one kid's got 12, and I'm like, what are we gonna do? And then
Yeah.
that starts the conversation. Well, that coin is 10 cents. So I
Yes.
can actually take that and split it in half by making it two. And you can see where the conversation
Yeah.
goes.
Yeah. Yeah.
And we played money for years as kids. They would, let's go play money, Dad. And okay, up we go. Throw some coins on the ground. Okay, find the one with a face on it and just play that. I don't know. What do you think of that?
No, look, anything like that is fantastic. Just helping them understand that different coins have different value, and it's not necessarily the biggest coin with the biggest value.
That's the crazy
Um,
one. Yeah.
yeah, that's right. All those sorts of things are so powerful, and you're right. When they take cash away from us, I think it is going to make it so much harder for the
Crazy.
kids to actually understand and to be able to equate. Like for instance, with I have a book, in fact, that I've almost finished called the 20 things that parents need to teach their kids about pocket money, um, and or to use pocket money as a tool. And of course, as soon as we lose that pocket money, we're going to lose those lessons. Now, there's going to be ways around it, but it's not going to be nearly as effective. So you're going to have to think that much harder. But
Yeah. But we
yeah,
have to
yeah,
try.
no.
We have to, if we want to
Mm,
change the legacy of our last names,
mm, mm.
then we have to be the ones to do it. And as you know, everybody here is a business leader.
Yeah,
They're all running a cabinet shop that they either started from scratch or bought with
yep,
their own money and probably debt from the
yep,
bank. And so we all
yep.
get it. But thinking ahead to the future, how am I going to pass that on to my kids or even my employees? I mean, you deal with people the same as I do. How many times does an employee at a company here or say to us, "Well, you sold that kitchen for $80,000. You're making out like a bandit." They
Yeah,
think
yeah,
they think the owner
yeah,
walked out with eighty thousand
yeah,
dollars on that
yeah,
deal, and they're struggling for salary.
yeah.
No, that's not how it works.
It's not at all. And you're so right. Like employees do look like they do see that and they go, oh, they must be making so much money, but they have no idea of all the costs that go associated with running a business. And it is so hard to sort of, I actually have clients of mine that will often ask me, can you please explain to explain to my staff, or can we
Mm,
set some systems up? Is there an easy way to explain to my team how this actually works so that
yeah,
they understand that I'm not walking away with all this money and that actually I do need to charge his price and we do need to work more efficiently so that we can be profitable.
yeah,
Um,
brilliant.
Hey, have you ever been stuck in traffic behind somebody and you're questioning their logic? Boy, am I saying that in the politest way possible. You're a little frustrated with how they're driving. You might be saying things out loud to yourself you wouldn't normally say if the kids were in the car. Well, let's keep it polite. Those people don't know where their blind spots are, and we have those in business as well. If you feel like you might have blind spots in your company and you're not sure where to start, or you're trying to get somebody else bought into the changes you want to make to grow this company, I've got a tool for you. This is the exact same tool myself and the other business coaches in my team use with business owners who are trying to turn the business around. It's a 20-question self-assessment. And what it does is it removes the emotion from the conversation and makes it logical. And as you know, when we're looking at a logical thing, we can come up with solutions very easily. So it's a tool that you can use as an owner, as a leader, to start putting change in place where you think the priorities are. So this question is called the Where is my blind spots assessment. It's just 20 questions. And if you want to get that from me, go ahead and send me a text message. I think you already know my cell phone number, but I'll say it here again, 315-903-7853, and just say blind spots and we'll send it over.
Well,
yeah.
let's jump into that. What's the first step a busy shop owner, a woodworking owner can do to get in control of money without having a finance degree, without being a CPA? What do we do?
Yeah. Yeah. Look, and can I say, I think it's a lie that we tell ourselves that that we can't understand it, or we don't understand it, or that we need a finance degree. Money is actually very, very easy when you understand the basics. And I always say to every single one of my clients, look, there's really only 5, and if you're a cabinet maker, probably 6 numbers that we need to know. The first one is what was my revenue for the month?
Well, thank you for saying revenue and not turnover.
In
Australia, you guys say turnover.
Yeah, that's right. So what was my revenue for the month? And what I say to them is, physically, what did you receive in the bank account? Not what we've got promised and not what we've got invoiced. What do we physically receive in the bank account? Because I'm very much a cash guy. Like I think, whilst I understand that the accounting frameworks and metrics are all there for a reason, I actually think that from a business owner's perspective, you and I will sit down, and when we think about profit in the bank as business owners, we actually think about, when we think about profit, we actually think about, well, I should have more money in my bank account. And as we know, that's not how the accountants actually think about profit necessarily. So I always say, let's just deal with the cash numbers. Let's deal with what we've actually got. Let's make this simple. So we've got revenue. What have we actually received this month? And then what we've got is, well, what was the salary that I paid myself? And I know for many business owners that there's not a set salary.
They're laughing right now. They're like, salary?
Yeah, I know. That's exactly right. Salary? What's that?
Celery. I like my celery with peanut butter, but I don't take any money from the company, which is why they listen to the show. As you know, this show is all about helping somebody be an entrepreneur who just happens to run a wood shop.
Yes.
A business person who runs a wood shop, not a contractor who runs a cabinet shop.
Yeah. That's exactly right. And that's most entrepreneurs and business owners, isn't it? They come into it because they've got a specific skill set and they go, well, I should start a business. And then they realize that that's so much harder than just being good at what they do.
Yeah.
So we've got salary. And what I often talk to with...
But that's salary to myself. You're not talking about any employees I have.
No.
I got 10 or 15 employees.
Yourself.
It's just salary to me. Okay.
Me. What do I get paid? And I always start this process with... Because as you and I both know, they're laughing right now. But again, well, what salary or it's certainly not coming in here consistently. If there's money left, I might pay myself. And so what we want to do is firstly work out, well, what is the salary that you actually need? Like ideally, we've got this hole in our household budget that is supposed to be filled by the money we're bringing from the business. And so what is that? What is that minimum? And I'm not talking about, the best salary. I'm just talking about what is it that I need so that my home life is covered and family's happy.
Well, and let me add something, and without getting into too much detail, you and I had a pre-conversation.
Yep.
A lot of the people listening to this show are also taking care of aging parents. And so their responsibilities quite often have extended, or maybe their kids are now having kids. So it's not just what do you need, but all the people who rely on you, what do they need?
Yep.
Can I add that to the...
Yeah, absolutely. And that's exactly right. And so that's about figuring out what is that number. Because I think sometimes it's this nebulous, oh, well, if I could just pay myself $5,000 a month or 10 grand a month. And it's not, we don't know, we're just guessing. And so what I say to people is, no, let's actually work out what it is. Because once we've got a concrete number, at that point, we can get a bit more serious about it. And we've got something to work towards.
Right.
And when you've got that concrete number, it does actually, you can sort of work backwards from there and go, okay, how do we make this happen?
I like that. And I'm happy if somebody's afraid of the number. And if you're not sure if you're afraid of the number, ask your wife what the number should be.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, that's right. And I will say that particularly given the type of, we're talking about cabinet makers and those sort of things, and most of the trades are dominated by men. Most men have absolutely no idea what it really takes to run the household. They're not the ones buying the kids' clothes and getting the kids' haircuts and paying for the kids' school photos and all those sorts of things. Right. So it is really important that as you go through this process, you involve your better half to help you figure out what those numbers are. And coming up with that definitive number, so you can go, okay, that is, if I'm not paying myself that right now, that's what I need to work towards.
Right.
Now, of course, when I'm talking about the 5 numbers, for most people, it will be what salary, or it's very inconsistent. So, but still, we need to track that. So first number is, what was my revenue for the month? Yep. Second one was, what did I actually pay myself? That's either as a W-2, you're paying yourself a salary through the business, or whether it's just owner drawings or distributions, whatever that money is, what was it that you paid yourself this month?
Perfect.
So far that should be pretty easy. We can easily get that from our bank account. What were those numbers? Then the third number, and this is where it splits into two, particularly for cabinet makers, is normally I just say number 3 is expenses. What were all the expenses that I had within the business this month? And again, this shouldn't be hard to find. Ideally, and I often talk about the ideal bank account structure, for most business owners, what we really want is all income coming into one operating account and all expenses going out of one operating account.
Okay.
We might have credit cards, but again, try and keep that to the absolute minimum, because the more credit cards you've got, the more places you have to go to try and get some clarity on what my expenses actually are. So if we can narrow that down and keep that super simple, it makes our lives so much easier. So we want to be able to then go, what were all my expenses this month? And for there's a couple of things I want to say about that. But firstly, we split those expenses in, of course, for cabinet makers particularly, into the cost of goods sold, or the cost of sales, and then into overheads. So, but just know, again, having it, like I have and we can talk more about this a little bit later on, but I've got like what I call a profit snapshot. So it's more a cash flow snapshot of profit that we literally put these things into. What was my revenue? What was my salary? And what were all my expenses divided into cost of goods sold and divided into overheads?
Perfect. Wow, this is so to the point. Because one of the problems that people have in this, which is actually the title of our episode, is my accountant told me I made money this year, but where is it? And so you're now, it's not just this black box of money. There's actually, there's ways to make it into layers and chunks and buckets and boxes. And
Yes.
Or
and
grandma's
it's
jars,
really,
as
really
you like to
easy
say.
to do. And look, if your bookkeeper's doing their job, this should be in the profit and loss. So there's a report called a profit and loss. The problem is the accountant's profit and loss doesn't include a whole bunch of things that we think as business owners it should. And so we're assuming it does, and it doesn't. And that's why there's this discrepancy between what your accountant calls profit and what we call profit. So
And
that's right.
I actually take home.
Yeah, that's exactly right. So things like, for instance, your salary, like unless you're paying yourself as a W-2, if you're in the US, as an employee of the business, unless you're paying yourself a salary there, it's not included. Like let's say you're taking just owner drawings or distributions, they're not included in the profit and loss. Neither is debt payments that you're making.
Right.
So if you've got debt against equipment or against a truck or those sorts of things, the repayments are not included in your P&L. Neither is any major equipment purchases, and neither is the tax that you have to pay along the way. So what that means is that you're missing all those things, so that, of course, when you look at the bottom, you go, well, my accountant said I made a profit, but I don't see it from a cash flow perspective. It's because all of those things actually weren't factored in by your accountant. So whenever I put together what I call the profit snapshot, which are these numbers, I make sure that all of those are factored into the equation. And so number 4 is, once we've got the expenses, we also then do work out the tax. Now, this isn't an exact figure. This is an approximate figure, but it's good enough to go, okay, here's my revenue minus my expenses. What have I got left? And it's what I've got left then is what I have to pay tax on. And so then we just have a very simple formula down the bottom that might just go, okay, well, I paid tax at approximately 22 cents in the dollar. So I'm going to take, if I've got $10,000 down the bottom that's left over after all my expenses, I'm going to take $2,200 out. I'm going to put in a separate bank account. And then what's left after that, that is then mine to keep. And by actually just having a really simple spreadsheet that we've got all of that in, I do this for some of my clients, but I also do it for myself. This literally takes 15 minutes to half an hour every month to do, but you totally understand where the money went.
Cash position. Right.
Your cash position. And the powerful thing about this is once you can see that, you can then start asking yourself all the right questions to say, okay, this month's not quite where I want it to be, but what do I need to do to make it better next month? And so just that awareness, being able to see the numbers, suddenly gives you that power to be able to go, what do I need to do to make it better next month?
Crazy. This is good. So you're saying the 5 numbers that we need to track are revenue, salary to myself, expenses, and my total tax burden, right? My total
Yep,
tax.
my tax. And then the fifth one is, what have I got left? Or
That's
not got left.
That's what we're all trying to get to. What's left?
That's right.
Right.
That's right. And for a lot of people, it's often is, I haven't got anything left at the end of this month. And it's okay. What do we then need to do about that? And so it is then just like, again, that clarity, that awareness, like suddenly you can start to see, this is why my bank account isn't full every month. This is why I'm struggling to make payroll. So at that point,
Yeah, no, sorry. Go ahead.
See, that's why we're struggling to make payroll. Now that I can see that, I can go, okay, well, I've got all the ingredients there for, the business in terms of the finances. Which of these can I then start to tweak with and play with so that next month is actually a better month?
Yeah, I'm trying to, when you saw me put up my hand or sort of make a gesture there, I was trying to think of, how does somebody start? Like, how do you break out of the cycle that you're in and get away from being paycheck to paycheck or living off deposits, which, by the way, I don't even want to talk about what the official term is when you're living off deposits. It's not a nice word legally. We're not going to talk about it.
No.
If you're running a cabinet shop where you're living on deposits or you're just barely scraping by, even though the company's doing well, what do I need to do? And I need the next 24 hours. Phil, tell me what I need to do the next 24 hours, and then let's say 24 days. Let's do that.
Okay, fantastic. First 24 hours is, firstly, now that you've got your expenses there in front of you, the first thing you want to do is just go through and look at, well, is there places that I am leaking money? And okay.
I'm so glad you said that, because I talk about profit leaks all the time. So there you go. Number one, find and fix my profit leaks. I love it.
And the reality is, business owners, it's almost like we've got a different set of rules for business money and personal money. So we often look at our business money almost like monopoly money, and we can just, especially like, the trades, it's like the new tools and the new equipment. And we can talk ourselves into saying, well, if I get that thing, I'm going to be so much more efficient and et cetera. And it's an investment in the business, and it's a tax deduction and all that sort of stuff.
So I say, I need it.
Yeah.
I need that tool. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And I hear it all the time from the clients that I work with. I need that new, excavator, or I need that new
CNC
dust extraction fan and all those sorts of things. I need all these things. And it's like, well, you've been doing business quite successfully and quite okay without it for the last however long. Now, of course, they might say, yeah, but I haven't been profitable. But the problem is, it is this spending within the business that actually often robs us of profitability. And it's amazing the number of clients that I will sit down with. And once we start to honestly take a good hard look at where the money's going, we start to realize that every dollar that we're spending within the business is robbing us of a dollar that we can take home to our family. And so we need to come back to that and go, okay, firstly, I often say to people, let's just have a no spend month. Like, so for this month, now there's things that we do need, like there's the necessary stuff, of course. I'm talking about nothing new, nothing discretionary within the business. And just to be able to, just to put the brakes on. So what we can do is we can almost bring back the business to, what is my baseline expenditure? What is it that I need? So let's start to differentiate between the needs and the wants. What is it? How lean can I get this business? And so we want to come back to that, and that alone suddenly, and because we've got the numbers there, instead of it just going into our bookkeeping software, which we don't even look at until our accountant actually tells us at the end of the year or the end of quarter how we're tracking, we actually have an awareness in our eyes on the numbers, so we can see where is the waste.
I just have to make a funny observation, and you're in Australia, so the dates are going to be different, but quite often we'll ask somebody, what were your sales last year? And they'll look at the calendar and say, well, we submitted in April. So I won't know till May or June-ish.
Yeah.
And I don't want to laugh, because I was that guy for a long time.
Yeah.
I lived as that guy.
Yeah.
I have the macaroni and cheese coupons to prove it. It was these were not good days.
No, they're not. They're not. And it's very, very stressful. And I think, and so much of it is we sort of distance ourselves from the numbers, often because we think it's going to be hard, or we think that, or it's very scary to know. But, when we have the courage to face up to those numbers, when we actually have we take the time to make it a priority, it's typically, it's not as bad as what we think. And because, in our minds, in the absence of facts, our brain will always fill that void with fear. And so because we feel that void with fear, we then want to avoid it. We want to, try just not deal with it. We don't want to look at it. And then I can tell you that the number of times that I've had clients where we sat down, we've worked through the numbers, then they go, oh, I was really stressed about that. They said, but the words that I hear from clients then are things like freeing, empowering, therapeutic, cathartic, powerful. Just that now that they know, they can do something about it.
Right.
And so that having this month-to-month process where it's about, okay, I am going to take responsibility for this. I am going to understand my numbers. I'm not just going to go, I've set up my finances because I have a bookkeeper. I'm actually going to know what the numbers are so that I can take proactive, purposeful action so that next month is a better month. And if you do that every single month, you'll be amazed, because of that awareness, that you are now making decisions that drive the business forward.
You just reminded me of something that an older woman told me many years ago. She said, action is the antidote for despair.
Yes. Yes.
Isn't that great?
Yes.
And she was just this little tiny powerhouse of a woman. And at the time she must have been, I'd hate to say she's my age now, which I thought she was 80. I thought she was 80 when she told me this. Dominic, action is the antidote for despair.
Yeah.
But, how many times do we get stuck? And I'm sure you've heard this paralysis by analysis. When really, I just need clarity and purpose and focus, and then the accountability to do it.
Yeah. 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 That's exactly right. And it is, and like I often say, because often people get stuck in this shame, and shame is probably the worst sort of emotion that you can have regarding money. But the shame, the embarrassment, the fear, and we get stuck in that place. And I always say to people that it's action that will drive you out of that will get you out of that, because you're moving forward and doing something about it.
So, you know what I realized I forgot to ask you?
Yeah.
I mean, your company's called Grandma's Jars, and originally you started with Grandma's Jars. And by the way, I remember buying my son like a clay piggy bank, and it was the shape of a baseball mitt. And each of the mitts had a little word on it that, this is for tithing, this is for saving, this is for whatever, this is for cookies, or whatever the words were. Yeah. So maybe it's along the same lines, but tell me about this Grandma's Jars thing, and how does it work? And then how does it work?
Oh, okay. Oh, well, I mean, I don't, the principles are always the same for Grandma. And so I do have software that I use that basically that we've developed that is pretty much the same principles. We know what firstly, we identify what our expenses are.
Right.
Secondly, we then work out, well, how much are all those expenses across the course of a year? Then we work out what they are as 1/12. So what is it as a monthly figure? Now, this is really important because, and so that's what you think about a glass jar. We're basically saying, here's the expense and here is the amount, whacking a label on the jar and saying, this is how much I need to put in the jar every single month. And see, one of the biggest mistakes we make when we manage our finances is that we try and make all of this month's expenses fit into this month's income. And that works really well until one of those big annual expenses come up, or until, we get to Christmas and now we've got to buy presents for everyone and we've got hospitality and it just, and then, to make it all that much worse, we need a new set of tires for the car, and so that doesn't work when we're trying to make all of this month's expenses fit into this month's income. So what we do is we take all the anticipated expenses for the year, we divide it by 12, and every month has the responsibility of contributing to every expense. So that when those things turn up, regardless of whether or not they're an annual expense, a quarterly expense, or a monthly expense, the money is just sitting there accumulated, ready to go.
So this is a crazy question, and tell me if I'm going down the wrong path. But once I do that exercise where I say, okay, here's going to be all my monthly expenses across all the things we're doing and need to do, then I go and I need to invest in something. I need to invest in marketing, or maybe I do need to invest in a new machine. It's going to change my needs. How often does that conversation about moving money around
start to show up in your conversations when a client says to you, I think I need to raise my rates.
Hey, if you want to get a laugh tonight at the dinner table, start calling the mashed potatoes Irish guacamole. That'll get them rolling. Hey, listen, we've got a new tool for you. It's called the Find and Fix My 8 Profit Leaks Workbook, and it is no joke. In any contracting business or construction business, but especially in cabinetry and millwork, there are 8 profit leaks. And those leaks are like little cuts, and those cuts ooze blood. Sorry, there's a bit of a visual for you. What I want to do is give you a tool, a very specific tool that myself and my coaching team use to find and then fix those 8 profit leaks. Now, this particular tool is set up as a self-assessment. Sometimes when we do our coaching meetings, we assign homework to our clients. And you can do this homework on your own as well. If you want this tool, to go ahead and grab it from us, print it off. And as you know, I want you to go to a coffee shop, face the corner, get a cup of coffee, your favorite coffee, put your headphones in, and just do the work. That's all it takes. A little bit of focused time to find and fix those 8 profit leaks. It's going to save you or make you money where you deserve to be saving or making it. So if you want this tool, send me a text. I think you already know my cell, but it's 315-903-7853. Go ahead and write that down. And then say to me the keyword profit leaks, and then I'll send you the profit leaks workbook. It's a great place to start.
Yeah. That's exactly right. And so there's 2 ways to solve it. And so when we were talking a minute ago, you're asking me in 24 hours, in like the next 24 hours, 24 days, what do we actually do?
Right.
I'd said to you, the first thing is we need to analyze our expenses.
Right.
And that's absolutely right. We do need to analyze our expenses. And because that is, again, that's an immediate thing that we can do that we have complete control over. The next thing is, yes, we absolutely do need to raise our rates. And for most business owners, they have no idea how much they actually need to be charging to be profitable on purpose. And I always say to people, you can engineer your business for profitability if you just understand some key numbers. Right. And if you think about your average job, so you've got a job and that job has costs associated with, so all the materials and so on that go into it. And if you've got a team that's got, you've got a team of cabinet makers, you've got their salaries and all the on costs associated with them. And so what you need to be able to figure out is for one job, let's say I make a job and my average profit on that job, okay, so we're talking job specific here. Let's say my profit on that job is 20%. Okay, so let's say, the job was $10,000 and I've made $2,000 after I've covered all the materials I put into it, all the salaries.
So you're talking about net profit.
Net profit here. That's right. Okay. So, but that $2,000, what most people don't understand is that, okay, that $2,000 then needs to come over here, and it's that $2,000 that covers all of my overhead expenses. So the question is, here's all my overhead expenses. And let's just say I've got, $10,000 worth of overhead expenses. Then how many jobs do I need to make at $2,000 profit to actually cover my overheads? And it's not just my overheads. It's also, okay, well, there's my salary. I want that paid. I've then got all my overheads. And then there's going to be tax I've got to pay on the salary I'm paying myself. And then how much profit do I want to factor in? So it's actually a really easy sum that I take my clients through to help them realize, okay, how much do I need to obviously the profit margins are important. And can I just point on this? I was going to say, how many jobs do I need to be able to sell in order to cover my overheads? Now, an important thing in this is I just said to you, let's just say I make a 20% profit. What that means is that for every $1 of overhead expenses, I actually need to make $5 in, revenue over here. Does that make sense?
Yes. 20. Okay. That's 20%, right?
Yeah. That's 20%. But if I could just increase my profit margin on my job over here to 30%, then all of a sudden, for every overhead expense, I only actually need to make $3 in revenue. So what happens is the more efficient I can become, the better I can charge better. Like I'm working with a guy who's a painter in Kansas at the moment. And we've been working over the last few months to get his profit margins on his jobs from, they were about 30%, then now it's sitting at 50%. So what that means now, he's now gone from a situation where he needs to earn $3 in revenue to cover $1 of overheads to only needing to make $2 in revenue to cover $1 in overheads.
Excellent.
And that's made a huge difference within his business. So if we can just understand those metrics really simply, then all of a sudden we can start to work out, well, what do I really need to charge to make sure that I am profitable on purpose?
That's crazy. It's funny how this is really the first time you and I have met other than our introductory call. And we're talking about the same things. And you're in Australia.
Yeah. Well, I said at the start, the principles of money are the same all over the world. They'll be the same today as they are in 100 years' time, the same as they were 100 years previously.
I've been guilty, though, of thinking, let's use the gentleman in Kansas as an example. Let's say I lived in Kansas. I start to think that the whole world is Kansas City.
Yes.
Right? And I start to act as if that's the whole world and that I'm the only one with these problems.
Yeah.
And I'm not the only one with these challenges. Right? And the beauty of the day and age we live in right now is I can call you up in Australia and ask you advice on how to solve these issues. And we're having a totally reasonable conversation with doable actions. And it's global. It's universal.
Yes.
And I want people to recognize that. You might hop in your truck and drive to your shop every day or maybe go to an install, and that feels like your world, but we're actually just working on sound business principles.
Yes.
That's it.
Yeah.
That's it.
It is. It is. And the thing is, none of it is hard. Like, I think in our heads, we tell ourselves it is hard, but none of this is hard. Once you just get the basics, like even what I was just telling you about that, how much we're making on our jobs to cover our overheads and so on. Once you sit down and go, okay, for me, this is how it works. And I do this with people all the time. They go, okay. And it's really easy. It is just committing some time to pulling the numbers together so that we can do that.
And I think respectfully, that we have to remember that everybody listening to this show started on the tools. There might be one or two people who didn't. But they started on the tools, and so they're really good on the tools. Nothing scares them. They know how to build within minute tolerances and build beautiful furniture, cabinetry.
Yeah.
And so now we're talking about a new skill set. And that, I think, for me, that's where the fear came. I'm not a math guy. And so, the really easy solve for me is I need to see my reports on graphs and charts.
Yes.
Because if you show me a spreadsheet and I'm already tired, I'm like, I need a coffee. There's something else I'm supposed to be doing. What is it? But when I see graphs, it's just the way my mind works, and I'm open to saying it. You guys can all make fun of me, but I know what works for me. If I see a graph, if I see a scatter graph or a pie graph or a bar, I'm like, that was low. It's supposed to be higher. That's all I need. I'm like, well, I better go do something there.
Yep.
And that gives me the action. Then other people, we've got coaches on our team that are very detail specific. And they're like, well, I think that a grid layout is the most effective way to do that because I can see that. I'm like, yeah, you're right. But that's your way to do it.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, exactly right. Yep.
All right. Give us a big sounding piece of advice to wrap up this whole thing. When we talk about, my accountant told me I made profit this year. Where is it? Let's wrap this whole thing up with one big reminder from you.
I would say there's two things. Can I say two things? Have I got enough time?
Yeah, you can do two.
Okay.
Yeah.
The first one is that don't be fearful of your numbers. I think just have the courage, take the steps just to go those 5 numbers that I was telling you about before. Let's just make sure. Let's write them all down. Let's get them down. What was my revenue? What did I pay myself as a salary, if anything? What were all of my expenses? How much should I put aside for tax? So that's just a very simple formula based on my revenue minus my expenses. Let's put 20% aside. And then what have I got left? Okay, so start there. And that's it. And that's the sort of thing that you can do in the space of half an hour. But I would start there and then start asking yourself, well, what can I learn from this, and what can I do better next month to be more profitable? That's it. I would start absolutely there. The second thing that I would say too is once you start to make some profit, what you want to do to create financial stability in your lives, and we won't go into today, but I have like a cascade that I talk all my clients through that sort of defines what is a priority order for any profit I make, what is a priority order for how this gets used. And I always say the first thing is that you want to have at least 1.5 times your monthly operating expenses sitting in your operating account. So once you've worked out what all your expenses are and you've got a good figure, and the good thing about doing the 5 numbers every month is you start to see an average. You start to see what is my average expenses, what is my average revenue, etc. And we can then go, okay, my average expenses times that by 1.5, that's how much I need to have sitting in my operating account. And then that becomes a set figure that allows you to say with confidence, I need that, I've got more, I can take that more out. And confidently take it out and not stress about what's coming. The second thing then is we want to have what I call a rainy day fund, because the unexpected can and will occur. And as entrepreneurs, we know that's definitely the case.
Oh, yeah.
The unexpected can and will occur. So
when
the
inspector
rainy
walks
day,
in to look at your dust collector and says, yeah, we changed the bylaws in this city. That no longer qualifies.
Yeah, 100%.
Something crazy like that.
That's exactly right. We know these things will happen. But with a rainy day fund, it's not a full-on cash reserve. It's more just I've got something there if the unexpected comes up, so I'm covered. Now, the reason we go to those steps is because the third step then is then we can start tackling debts. We've got ourselves into a bit of debt. At this point, we can confidently start covering debt because we've got 1.5 times our average monthly expenses sitting in our operating account. We know we've got our known expenses covered. With our rainy day fund, we've got our unknown expenses covered. So at that point, we've basically strangled the need to use debt for anything. And so once we've done that, anything that we start paying off our debt stays off our debt. One of the biggest problems I see so many business owners have is that they go, I've got my debt, I hate my debt, I just want to get rid of it. Income comes in, I cover my immediate expenses, and then anything left over, I pay off my debt. And then, of course, something unexpected comes up, or there's a bigger than I anticipated expense. And so I got nowhere to go but to put it back on debt. So I get stuck in this horrible cycle of the debt goes up, the debt goes down, the debt goes up, the debt goes down. And I never get the headway. But if you take the time to say, no, my profits, before I pay off my debt, my profits are going to be build up my operating account so that I have 1.5 times monthly expenses. Then I have my rainy day fund. Then I can confidently start paying money off my debts, knowing that that's never going to come back again because I've got the 2 other expenses covered. And then once you get through the debt, once we've got our debt paid off, you've freed up more cash flow. It takes a burden off your business. Then we can start turning the rainy day fund into a proper cash reserve that is ideally, 3 to 6 months worth of reserves behind me. And that allows me to confidently pay myself a salary. It allows me to confidently take on team members. It allows me to confidently grow, scale the business if that's what I want to do. And the beautiful thing about doing things this way is that also, as your business grows, as you take on more team, that means your operating expenses go up. So you need 1.5 times more operating expenses in your operating account. You need that much more in your reserves account, which builds a foundation wider so that if you want to, the business can go higher with confidence.
Yeah. It's all about taking small steps forward, even though we know there's going to be things that stop us or trip us up. But just keep marching forward.
100%. It's about purposeful. Let's just think about getting intentional and purposeful with it. And when you do, everything will change. That awareness, the 5 numbers, will change everything for you once you can focus on those.
All right. Well, Phil, thank you very much for being with us. If somebody wants to find you in this massive global wide world, since you're in Australia and I'm here, how do we find you?
You can find me on Facebook, Phil McGilvray. I have the Money Boss. My goal is to help people become money bosses of their lives. So if you just go to Facebook and you'll find Phil McGilvray there. Obviously on LinkedIn. I will also, if you would like, I've got a book called The Cashflow Fix, which if they want to have a look at that, there's a link there. I'll give you the link. It's called the Cashflow Fix book, I think.com. But they can go to there and have a read of that. There's an audio book that goes with it. So when you're out and about driving, you can have a listen to it. That's a good place to go. But I've also got a free training that I'm happy to put a link in the bottom if you like, to give you the link that is on those 5 numbers. How do I find those 5 numbers? How do I put it together? What does it look like? Just so they've got a guide for doing that.
Oh, well, thank you. We'll put that in the show notes that people can reach. And then, of course, I guess if they can't contact you on LinkedIn or Facebook, that you can share that with them there as well. Well, Phil, thank you for being back. I'll tell you, one of the things I wrote down here is how to attack debt. That might be a topic in the future. We have you here just to talk about, because how many people have government debt or
came
Yeah.
through a divorce, had to use money for X, Y, and Z when they should have been using
Yeah.
it for A, B, and C, and now they've got a
Yeah.
massive tax debt,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
it's hanging over their heads.
Yes, yeah, absolutely it does, and it weighs on the business significantly. And so, yeah, I would love to talk about that. That's something that I'm very passionate about. You know, of my, I've had clients paid off over $18 million in credit card debt in the last 5 years.
One client had
Just
18 million, or amongst all your
no, a
clients?
whole bunch of
I'm like
clients.
that because that person's got a
Yeah, yeah,
problem.
not one. No, I've had some doozies, but not 18 million. So yeah. No, I'd love to talk about that if we got a time somewhere in the future.
Let's do it. All right. Thanks, Phil.
Right,
Have a
man.
great day.
Thanks, Dom.
Yeah. Bye bye.